Ooh, what's up everyone? My name is Mistic and welcome back to Mr. Wax. Today I'm watching a video by Brew. I don't think I've ever watched a video by them, but the video today is about catching the man selling dead people on Instagram. Um, I'm hoping this is not a recent story and that this is maybe around whenever Instagram first came out in I don't know when Instagram came out. Like the 2000s, late 2000s, I think, maybe early 2010s. I don't know. All I know is I joined Instagram in 2016. So hopefully this is not recent. Also, my first time watching this channel, I think. So I'm not sure what to expect. Let's get into it.
Back in November, people began noticing a strange Instagram account that
November.
almost exclusively featured artistic photographs of human remains. If you know, you know. Skulls and
November.
bones available. DM to inquire. It seemed whoever was behind this account wasn't just photographing
Like
skulls. They were
2025?
selling them. But what was the meaning behind the cryptic line, if you know, you know? Months later, the world would find out. A leaked video of unknown...
That feels like such an obvious line. What the fuck? Could you be any more suspicious? If you know, you know. I did not think this would be last year. November? What?
origin started to appear on social media feeds. It showed the inside of a house, filled with dead bodies. And then, all of a sudden, the Instagram account and leaked video disappeared from the internet. But thankfully, we had documented everything before it was lost forever.
Really?
On November 7th, 2025, at 11:29 a.m., officers from the Eden Police Department were dispatched to the Mount Moriah Cemetery in Pennsylvania. As soon as they arrived, the scene immediately drew concern. The Hunter family mausoleum, previously sealed with cinder block and cement,
Do
had
they
been
steal
forcibly
bodies?
opened. Inside, the marble floor had been broken apart, exposing the crypts nearly 10 feet below ground level.
I mean, that's better than killing people, I guess. But you're still literally stealing and selling bodies from a graveyard. That's not. Oh,
Among the
God.
debris, investigators found a screwdriver engraved multiple times with the name Brian.
Huh?
Also inside the mausoleum was a rope that suggested it had been used to descend into the exposed crypts. One of those crypts belonged to Martha Hunter, a preteen who died in 1869. The marble stone sealing her resting place had been forcibly breached. Her remains, along with her clothing, were missing. Before police could determine who Brian was or why someone would steal the remains of a child buried more than a century earlier,
Yeah.
were called back to the cemetery.
Why would you
On
also
November
put your name
29th,
on anything?
2025, police were directed to Jonathan Pritchard Family Mausoleum. 5 of the 9 crypts inside had been robbed. However, this time, the perpetrator had left an empty can of Monster Energy, and the police were able to recover 2 partial fingerprints from it.
Oh, hell
Swabs
yeah.
were also taken from the can, as well as the Brian screwdriver for DNA samples.
Yeah.
Whoever was doing this was expanding their grave robbing. It seemed like the age of the deceased didn't matter at all, only the remains themselves.
Right.
It seemed the grave robber was getting sloppy already, though, leaving more and more clues for investigators. But would it be enough to catch them? However,
Hopefully.
the police were called again, this time about a robbery that had occurred weeks earlier. On November 6, 2025, at a cemetery on 1500 block of Westminster Road, Luzerne County, more than 100 miles from Mount Moriah,
Damn.
2 sets of remains were stolen.
Okay.
The victims were Mary Capelina Paga, an 83-year-old woman who died in 1981, and Leo Terrence, a 53-year-old man who also died that same year. 2 cigarette butts and 2 energy drink cans were collected and sent for DNA analysis.
How are you gonna be
Police
so
were called on
careless
at
doing
least
this
3
stuff?
more occasions in December, where they discovered that 49 sets of remains were taken from 9 different families' resting places in Mount Moriah Cemetery.
So at least 9 people, but 49 things. How are you this careless and don't come up in the system? Because if they've got DNA, so clearly he's not been in the system before, right? I think that's how it works.
The cemetery is split by the border of Eden and Philadelphia. And
Okay.
police eventually became aware of 10 additional family plots being burglarized in the Philadelphia section in the same manner as the robberies in the Yeadon section
How
in the
long does it
cemetery
take
in
someone to
Luzerne
notice
County. By
that?
the end of December, the total confirmed stolen bodies had reached 61. This number, however, does not include the 10 additional family plots that were burglarized, since the exact number of corpses taken from
60
those sites
bodies?
remains unknown. Investigators noticed the same details repeated: cigarette butts, empty energy drink cans, and in at least 2 mausoleums, police found broken wooden pallets propped upright, presumably used as makeshift ladders to climb in and out of underground vaults. The scale of the crimes raised a troubling concern. What would drive someone to go through the extremely difficult, dishonorable, and frankly disgusting work to exhume so many dead bodies?
Either money or perversion or cannibalism, but okay, it's 3 options: money, kinks, or cannibalism. Which is cannibalism a kink? I don't I don't want to know the answer to that. But those are the 3 options. And this one seems to be money. So, I don't know if that's better or worse. They're all bad.
And what on earth could they possibly be doing with them all? Barbara Kilmartin, who had family members buried at Mount Moriah,
Mhm.
later said, "It's the last thing we can do for people is to honor their wishes and to not disturb them. I just can't understand why somebody would do that."
Right.
Well, she was not alone in her confusion, but
This is why you
another question
cremate.
lingered. Why Mount Moriah? Established in 1855, the cemetery had long served as a final resting place for a wide range of Philadelphia's
Does the
population.
cemetery
After the
matter?
cemetery was abandoned by its owners, a volunteer group, Friends of Mount Moriah,
Oh, it
was
was
formed in 2011 to
abandoned.
restore the grounds and preserve the site as a place of quiet remembrance.
Mm,
However, despite the volunteers' efforts, the
that
cemetery is
explains
still
why
quite
that
run
one.
down. This could be why the grave robber was targeting Mount Moriah in particular. Due to
Probably.
its size,
Or maybe
overgrown
he just
vegetation,
knew
and
it
lack of
better.
consistent maintenance or monitoring, it's not hard to imagine why a person and their illicit actions would
Right.
go unnoticed. That changed on November 7th, when members of the Friends of Mount Moriah contacted police after first noticing signs of disturbance at one of the mausoleums.
Mm.
As authorities continued to investigate, they received a tip. "Look into Jonathan Gerlach for the Luzerne County Mausoleum robbery. I know someone who's friends with his family, and they mentioned that they recently discovered a partially decomposed corpse hanging in his basement, but were afraid to tell the police." Well,
What?
talk about a
What? What? Wait, what? What? Partially decomposed corpse hanging in his basement? And you didn't say anything? Also, is what was the other guy? What was the guy's name? Brian? So either he's framing someone, or this ain't him and this is just another weirdo. How they mentioned that they recently discovered. I have I have so many questions. What?
decomposed corpse hanging in his basement, but were afraid to tell the police. Well, talk about a first lead. Police took it seriously and immediately started digging. Records showed that Jonathan Gerlach was charged on November 6, 2025, with shoplifting tools from
Oh,
a hardware store in East Earl Township, Lancaster County. Search
way to
warrants
not
stated that
be
the stolen
suspicious.
items included a headlamp, a rechargeable LED glow stick, a hammer drill bit, medium-sized work gloves, and a metal cutting wheel with a combined value of $167.43.
6.
Investigators noted that during the same visit to the hardware store, Gerlach paid for more than $250 worth of other merchandise. Court
Then
documents emphasized
why
that
did
the
he
items he did
steal?
not pay for were tools commonly associated with burglaries. He may have
Um,
believed that stealing the tools would help him avoid detection, but
that
instead
just
it
made it
backfired
worse.
and only drew further attention to his actions and raised
Yeah.
suspicion. The tipster also directed investigators to Gerlach's Instagram account. What they found raised further concern. Of the 147 posts on the account, only 2 showed Gerlach himself. The rest depicted human and animal
Okay,
remains.
so it
In
is
his
him.
most recent post, dated January 5th, 2026, he wrote,
This year?
"If you know, you know. Skulls/bones available. DM to inquire," followed by a pointer finger emoji and, quote, "from my personal gallery." An earlier post from October 1st, 2024 contained just one word: sold. As police reviewed the account more closely, some of the most
Not
disturbing posts
suspicious.
appeared to involve the remains of a child. In one post, Gerlach wrote, "This precious little one, just 3 or 4 years old, has recently come under my guardianship to be honored and preserved. She will find a place in my private collection, where she will be housed with the utmost respect." Nothing further was said about who the child was or where the remains came from. Was this skull from one of the multiple children's corpses stolen from Mount Moriah? If so, does supposedly restoring and handling them with care justify removing them from their
No.
resting place? Is it even possible for this child's remains to be honored and housed with the
No.
utmost respect if her caretaker is the same person who took her from her home in the first place?
Absolutely
While
not.
Gerlach claimed to keep some remains for his personal
That
collection,
made
others
that
were
sounds
allegedly
even
sold, like the
worse.
remains of a 6
Like taking them is bad enough. Like if you're not if you're not using for financial gain, why'd you take it? And why are you keeping the child? Why are you doing that? Why'd you do that? 6-month-old infant.
month-old infant, as well as those of a 3 or 4-year-old child, whose skull was
Why not to those
modified into an
states?
exploding head. Dozens of other posts featured remains identified only as young adults or older individuals. The account also displayed animal remains. Kittens, leopards, and other wild cats appeared throughout the feed.
Well,
Some were
that's at
listed as sold.
least
One example, a Bengal
normal
tiger posted on
ish.
March 20th,
Because
2024,
I've
was
seen
marked
people
as sold for
sell bones
$2,000.
like that
The
of
caption,
animals
Gerlach
before.
described the item as ethically sourced/acquired. That
Okay.
same phrasing appears repeatedly in the earlier days of his account, applied not only to animal remains, but to human ones as
I
well,
don't think
such as in one post
you
dated March
cannot,
18th, 2024, where he shows
unless the human literally signed a thing for like, uh, whatever the scientist thing is, using your body for that stuff. Unless they did that, there's not really an ethical way to source human bones. I don't think.
the
Hmm.
skull of a woman he claims was middle-aged, and ends with the statement, as always, ethically sourced/acquired, not for sale. However, in
What does
his
that
later
mean?
posts, specifically from the period when the grave robbing was taking place, his assurances of the remains being ethically sourced are notably missing. He also appears to be
Oh, at least he's
showcasing less remains
honest.
that he's keeping for his personal gallery and is more focused on selling them. But, okay, what does ethically sourced even
I
mean? And
don't
is there really a legal market for the sale of human remains?
know.
Surprisingly, yes.
When
In
you
recent
sign the
years,
thing,
human bones and modified remains have become increasingly visible on social media.
really.
The market includes a range of buyers, from collectors of curiosities to ritual practitioners.
Hmm.
A smaller number of contemporary artists and designers incorporate human remains into sculptures or installations. Medical and dental students have
There we
also
go.
historically sought real skulls for
Right.
study. There are,
That
however,
makes sense.
strict differences between legal anatomical preparation and illicit removal. In
Hmm.
2016, National Geographic reported that Skulls Unlimited was the only company in the United States legally processing donor skulls obtained directly through body donation programs. That company only sells donor skulls to verified professionals, including doctors, dentists, anthropologists, and others with legitimate scientific or
Makes
medical
sense.
needs.
That makes
Skulls from
sense.
the 18th, 19th, or early 20th century, which qualify as antique skulls, may be sold to the general public. At the
Okay.
federal level, there is no single U.S. law prohibiting the sale of human remains, with the
Okay.
exception of certain states and strict protections for Native American remains. As a result, collectors do not generally need credentials to buy or sell human skulls already on the market. So, the
Okay.
owning and trade of human remains is not illegal.
But
What
the
matters is how they were originally
obtaining.
acquired from the deceased.
Yeah.
Grave robbing itself is not new. For centuries, graves were disturbed to steal valuables buried with the dead. Body
Money.
snatching, however, emerged as a more specific practice tied to the rise of modern medicine. By the
Really?
late 18th century, advances
I
in
figured it'd
medical
be
training and the
cannibalism.
growth of medical schools had created a shortage of legally available bodies for dissection. This led to the rise of resurrectionists, individuals who exhumed the recently dead and sold the bodies to medical institutions. At the time, British law did not recognize buried bodies as property, allowing the practice to continue until legislation in 1832 reduced widespread grave robbing. However, the demand persisted. Over time,
Okay.
India became a major supplier of human bones for Western medical study, driven by economic hardship and limited burial options. That trade ended in
Right.
1985 when the sale of more than 1,500 child skeletons was uncovered, prompting India to ban the export of human remains. While
Goddamn.
many remains in circulation today originated as donated anatomical specimens, the renewed demand for human bones has coincided with a renewal in grave robbing. because anybody can sell human remains, it is difficult to determine what has been ethically sourced, but
Right.
still there is a way.
Why do
Donated
why do
anatomical
people want
specimens
that?
often show signs of preparation, such as drilled holes, varnish,
Okay.
or metal fittings. Remains taken directly from graves, by contrast, may exhibit soil staining, root etching, microfractures from long term burial,
Right.
or fragments of coffin
Signs
wood,
of
nails, or fabric
nature
still attached.
doing its thing.
Individually, these indicators are not definitive. Taken together, they help distinguish between remains prepared for study and those removed illegally from the ground.
Right.
For example, Jonathan Gerlach's post from July 22, 2025, shows a human skull in which he draws particular attention to remaining nasal hair, neck hair, facial hair, eyebrows, eyelashes, and fine vellus hair. Another post from August
How
22nd,
fresh was
2025,
that?
shows a skull with remnants of the eyes still present in the orbital sockets, visible hair on the skull itself, and signs of
Ugh.
decomposition consistent with being buried in the ground. By contrast, legally
How did
obtained
how did
skulls from
Instagram
Skulls
allow
Unlimited
that?
typically show clear medical preparation with clean surfaces and an
How does Instagram allow that? I get in trouble like posting gaming videos sometimes. What? How is that allowed? God damn, you can you can pay with shop for a human skull. You can go in debt for a human skull. That is what a time to be alive. Real human child skull. I do not like this time period we are in.
overall consistent standardized look. However, even if we ethically source the remains,
Hmm.
what is the morality of having a skull in your living room as decoration? As
Pretty
Jonathan Gerlach's
weird.
story
Pretty
gained
weird.
traction,
Also, this is being said by someone who personally has a skull. Like I think it's like a rodent skull that my cousin gave to me like years and years ago. But like that this is not a human skull in my house. It's an animal skull found like on the side of the road probably or like in the forest, not stolen from a grave. So, big big difference. Big difference hopefully. But I do have a skull in my room as decoration, but it's not weird though.
so did his Instagram. And in one post dated November 6, 2023, a user wrote, "Not gonna lie, these pictures are beautiful. Thing is, these are remains of humans who have likely been dead for hundreds of years. Not saying it makes it right, but if I had been dead for so long that the world and any potential living relatives had long since gone themselves, I wouldn't be offended if some dude dug me up and took a few cool photos before dispersing my remains all over the place to people who love and appreciate that sort of thing. People might be grossed out, but there are others online who sell human bones." This comment brings up an argument, certainly, but if we're to take this comment seriously, the user here is describing a personal belief, one in which they would consent to being
Right.
exhumed, artistically photographed, and sold for profit
Mhm.
after death.
But we don't
But
know
here's
what
the
the
thing,
like
not everyone
six
would.
month old
Across
child
cultures, and
would have
even within the
done.
same culture, death is viewed differently. People have different beliefs on the sanctity of remains, as well
Right.
as different wishes for what should and
Uh
shouldn't
huh.
be done to the remains after they die.
I
Just because
personally
there
don't
are
care,
living
but some
people who
people
do not
do.
believe remains are sacred and don't care what happens to their body after they die,
Right.
doesn't mean that those people should be able to decide what happens to the dead bodies of people who do care.
Right.
What people choose to do with their bodies after death is their choice.
And
And
before
so far
death.
as it is possible, these wishes should be honored. Even when they can't, we should be mindful of a certain glorification of death and show respect for the life that came before. None of
Right.
which can be said about Jonathan's alleged actions. Breaking into crypts and stealing bodies is not what would qualify as being
Mhm.
respectful of people's wishes.
Definitely
Even when
not.
there aren't any living relatives of that person, if they were laid to rest in a cemetery, then we can assume that they didn't consent to being harvested for bones to be sold on Instagram.
Right.
Now, you might be wondering, Brew, why are you spending so much time discussing the morality of Jonathan's grave robbing? It's obviously bad, but you'd be
Some
surprised to see how many have
people don't
defended him
have
online, saying that what he did isn't that bad. So,
well, we people saying that people in the files aren't that bad, so some people just don't have IQ points. So we can't really listen to what they say.
So we thought we should try to lay out the reasons why what he did is, in fact,
You still
that
probably
bad.
won't change their
But at
mind.
this point in the investigation, Jonathan Gerlach was still at large, free to desecrate the dead as he pleased.
Right.
As police continued digging into his activities, another detail began to stand out. Among the followers on his Instagram account was a man named Brian, spelled the same way as the name repeatedly etched
Okay.
into the screwdriver recovered at one of the ransacked mausoleums.
I feel like
According
that's
to
a
search
normal way
warrants, the
to
person who had
write the
originally
name.
contacted them about Jonathan also told police that Brian had disappeared for several days in November and later mentioned he had been in Chicago selling a human skull.
Did he
Did
kill
this mean
someone?
Jonathan Gerlach hadn't been acting alone? The same day they
Oh.
received the tip, investigators began tracking Gerlach's movements. On December 23rd, Eden police conducted a license plate reader search on Gerlach's Toyota RAV4.
Okay.
Records showed the vehicle had traveled into or near the areas where bodies were stolen on at least 5 occasions between November 2nd and December 17th, the same window of time when the thefts occurred. Court documents
Right.
also stated that cell phone records placed him in those same areas at the same times. On December
Sloppy.
23rd, a Yeadon officer on patrol at Mount Moriah noticed a Toyota RAV4 parked between 2 fallen tree limbs inside the cemetery.
How do people
Police
just
believe the
recognize
positioning was
cars?
intentional.
Like when I see a car, I just think, ooh, van, ooh, 2 doors. I confuse Volvo, Toyotas, Fords all the time. All modern cars just look the same to me. Like they all just look like ugly boxes of metal.
To conceal the
Like,
vehicle.
what's the difference?
No one was inside, but multiple
How
energy
do you
drink cans
identify
were
them?
visible on the front passenger seat. Later that evening,
Okay.
officers went to Gerlach's residence in Ephrata and saw the same vehicle parked outside.
Right.
On January 6th, detectives patrolling Mount Moriah again found Gerlach's Toyota parked near the cemetery. This time, police reported seeing human skulls and bones in the back seat. Gerlach was arrested shortly afterward when they observed him walking back toward the vehicle, carrying a crowbar and a burlap sack containing a child's mummified remains. That same day, police executed a search warrant at Gerlach's home. Inside, they reported finding over 100 human skulls, numerous human long bones, mummified human feet and hands, 2 decomposing human torsos, and other assorted skeletal items. Not long after, an alleged leaked video from inside his house surfaced.
It's like my grandmother's
Oh my God.
dentures.
It is. It's f***ing gross. Look at the one hanging.
Oh my god. Oh, this was a couple.
Look at these ones. All the ones behind you. God damn.
How do you
that one's
live
still
in that?
alive.
That's not long. It's all 5.
Well, you know,
Hold on, I want to get the hand.
What do you mean it's almost still alive? Like it's fresh?
Oh, sorry. Oh my God.
what the? Is that a pacemaker?
While we couldn't confirm the origin of the video, several details suggested it may be authentic. At the 21-second mark, one of the people visible in the footage appears to be wearing a firearm in a holster, indicating they were likely police. Earlier in the clip, between 9 seconds and 11 seconds, a couch is visible that closely resembles the fabric and design seen in the background of Gerlach's skull photographs.
Okay.
It is possible the couch or a similar piece of furniture was used as backdrop for those images.
Ugh.
Another detail drew particular attention online. A Reddit user known as Cardiotechie pointed out a visible pacemaker in the footage, writing, "The pacemaker detail makes
What
me
is
think
that?
it's real. That is definitely a real pacemaker design. Looks like a Medtronic or a Boston Scientific. That specific set of remains will be able to be identified at least."
What is a
second
pacemaker?
user, Livid Moose 553, noted that the video was edited. According to their observation, the opening seconds show a storage unit, while the remainder of the footage appears to be filmed inside a basement. Whatever the origin of the video, it offered a disturbing glimpse of what Jonathan Gerlach's basement may have contained.
May
According to
have.
authorities, Gerlach later admitted to stealing approximately 30 sets of human remains from Mount Moriah and described how he accessed the burial sites. On January 7th, 2026, District Attorney Tanner Rouse spoke at a press conference regarding the case.
It is truly, in the most literal sense of the word, horrific. I grieve for those who are upset by this, who are going
This was
through it,
a
who are
month
trying to figure out
ago.
if it is in fact their loved one or their child, because we found remains that we believe to be months-old infants among those that he had collected.
When Chief of Edinburgh Police, Henry Gianmarco, was asked if he had ever seen something similar, he replied,
No.
No. After 30 years now, I can say this is
I
probably the
cannot
most
think of
horrific
anything
thing
similar
that I've
I've
seen.
seen,
And
even in the
again,
news.
to the families, as the district attorney pointed out, we all have loved ones that passed. Like, rest in peace is rest in peace. And
Right.
this is definitely something that tears at your heartstring, especially when you see, as he pointed out, an infant having children and grandchildren. Yeah, it was definitely an event.
Jonathan Gerlach was ultimately charged with 489 criminal counts, including 100 counts of corpse abuse. Additional charges include theft, burglary, intentional desecration of venerated objects, trespassing, criminal mischief, receiving stolen property, and desecration of historic burial sites.
God
He was
damn.
held in custody in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, on a $1 million bail and was scheduled to appear at a preliminary hearing on
Was?
January 20th. While there were no further developments regarding Brian, whose name was
What do
etched
you
into a
mean
screwdriver
was?
found at one of the sites, District Attorney Tanner Rouse addressed the matter at a press conference. As of January 2026, Rouse stated that authorities did not believe Gerlach was working with anyone else, and that no
Mm-hmm.
additional arrest warrants have been issued. Beyond the charges and court dates, this case leaves behind a deeper question. Death is an unavoidable part of life, but where is the line between embracing it and romanticizing it? Behind every set of
Right.
remains was once a person who lived, made choices, and entrusted their body to the earth, their loved ones, or
Mm-hmm.
in some case, to science. Regardless of the
Well,
circumstances, human
I don't think
remains laid
anyone
to
in
rest
this,
are not
I don't think anyone here donated to science. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have been in the
meant to be
ground.
collected for decor or profit.
Right.
Because it is not only the dead who are wronged, but the living who trust that their final wishes will be respected. If you'd like to help us get the algorithm to notice this video, then hit the like button and
Hell yeah.
subscribe to our channel. But of course, there's a chance that this video gets demonetized, even though we've done our best to censor according to YouTube's guidelines.
Yeah, YouTube is a very weird creature because half of it is using AI to detect stuff. But I think that will be it for now. And what is your opinion on the morality of people who do this and also, for some reason, buy skulls and bones? I think that's a very weird thing to say. Maybe controversial opinion of the year, but it's a little weird. But until next time, bye.